So, you know, the West is kind of putting pressure on the East to go be like us, be more like us. And the talking point goes, why aren't you a democracy? Democracies are better than autocracies. For those of you who don't know, we're talking about the People's Republic of China. And they don't do democracy, and people have long surmised that the general theory and principle was that if your country wasn't democratic, it wouldn't really thrive and survive. But upon closer analysis, I think we all have to be honest and say that China, to a certain extent, has rewritten that script. Now, it is not without its problems, believe you me. There have been purges of the Communist Party members on the premises and guise of corruption. It was relayed to me that there was a story of an individual, I'm not going to use any names, who tragically might have unalived himself. Now, the party wasn't aware that this individual was under any type of investigations or had committed any corruption. But the individual was worried that they might be implicated in something. So, apparently they took their own life. Now, they left behind some type of note, and loose translation, it was sort of kind of a sentiment of being grateful and honored. You know, I don't think a lot of folks ever thought that the CCP, the Communist Chinese Party, or the Chinese Communist Party, I don't think a lot of folks ever thought that that party would really be helmed by an individual that was solely focused on the true principles of what the philosophy of communism really is about. The general welfare and betterment of the society. That's what the elements, the principles of communism is. Now the West always says, well, communism is cruel because it forces conformity, but the West is a bunch of hypocrites because they force conformity oftentimes in a different way. Through the exploitation of their citizenry, they force conformity. Yeah. And so you can say the same thing about the West that you can say about the East. In essence, it's two different operating systems, but if you look under the hood, they both kind of operate similarly. One just make claims about things that upon closer inspection, those claims don't necessarily hold much weight. The East doesn't make so many claims. They're very stringent and strict. And so they make no bones about it. They're like, this is what it is. This is it. The West kind of meanders around it. They're like, oh, well, no, you have the rights and freedoms and abilities. But then they'll come and find somebody that tells you, you actually don't have a right to do that. So the West is an illusion. And I always say the East is delusional. The West is an illusion and the East is delusional. Both are deeply problematic if you ask me. Now, the purges in the party, I'm not going to talk about specifics because those are integral matters to that republic. If I were there, I would address it. Some people say, well, you wouldn't be able to because the party controls a tight rein on communication. That's not necessarily all that true. It is to a certain extent, but not so much. It depends. Because people have been highly critical of the CCP party for a long time. Still are. But their criticism is different than the criticism of how Americans do criticism. See, Americans, we just love to complain about things that we have no intention of solving or fixing. So you can't run up in China and do that kind of shit. Yeah, Americans, all they do every day is complain about things that they have no intention of solving or fixing. They just love to complain. So China says if you're going to complain, at least have it be a legitimate complaint. Something that you offer a solution, problem solution. Americans is problem complaint. The solution is absent. I'm just being honest. There are folks that do offer solutions sometimes, but their solutions are not necessarily well taken into account or even voted on. We don't have totally direct democracy, because total direct democracy is like this. Suppose I live in a community and my representative, we elect a certain representative, and then we gather together as the people and we say, this is a problem in our community. We want you to fix it. And enough of us have identified this to be a problem, so you have to fix it now. Either your representative can fix the problem that you've come to a determination is a problem, or they can't. If they can't fix it, then there should be a mechanism in place where the citizenry says, well, if you can't do it, buddy, then we're going to do it ourselves as a citizenry. Yeah. So there's even flaws in a democracy, really, in terms of the operating system. This is going to go over a lot of you all's heads. But this conversation is about principles for a new and emerging world. You know, I looked at this whole democracy thing, and I looked at the system China's got. And to be honest with you all, both systems are kind of flawed. Really, in essence, they're kind of flawed. You know, it wasn't until the early 1900s, I think 1913, something around that time, 1913, 1917, no, Don't quote me on the exact year. But prior to that, if you wanted to be a United States Senator, the governor in your state would appoint you as senator. So we, the people, didn't get to choose who our senators were until 1913 or 1917. So democracy really, in essence, should always be evolving. We should always be trying to give more and more power to the citizenry. Now that can be scary because in a country like America, you have so many different jurisdictions, so many different entities competing for resources and things of that nature. You know, there's always this back and forth argument about states' rights versus federalism and that thing. In China, however, because it's one party rule, the people don't really argue too much about policies so much as it is whether their governing official, whether the governing official in their community is providing good governance. Yeah. So I was thinking about this, and I was like, really, China is kind of close. They're kind of close to it, but no cigar just yet. I was thinking, and this is just a thought experiment. That's all it is. It's a theory. You know, instead of the party telling folks in their communities, their areas where they live, who they think is best for them, I think that determination should come from the people in the Republic of China. If you live in a certain area, it should be the citizenry who say, who's doing a lot for our community? Who's done a lot? And the folks who think they're doing the most community service in the community, they should submit their resume. Yeah. And then you can have like a volunteer board of citizens who live in that community. Look over all the individuals who want to be their representative. And they determine, based off of who they look over, their resume, who's done the most for the community. And then they can send their preferred choice, their preferred individual, to the governing body, the CCP. Now the CCP would make the final determination, of course. So they might ask for all the resumes of folks who submitted applications to be in charge of their community. The governing board would provide them this information. They would say, but we've looked at all their resumes and we believe Chen Wang is better than Amy Lin. Both have done a lot, but Chen Wang, we think a lot more of us in the community think Chen Wang is better than Amy Lin. Now the CCP party would have overriding veto power. They would say, well, we appreciate you saying Chen Wang is better than Amy Lin, but we're going to go with Amy Lin. And they would send back that notice back to the community. Now here's an accountability mechanism that I think should be put in place to check and balance the CCP party. If you get 60% of that volunteer board refute what the governing body has said, they can override the CCP party. See, this keeps both entities in check. There's checks and balances. And that's what's best. You always want to have checks and balances on everybody. Not to say that anybody will necessarily do anything incorrectly, but, we're all flawed. Maybe it's the case that Amy Lynn is a relative of a high-ranking CCP party member, and they want her to have the job, even though she's not the most qualified, not the most community service minded individual. They don't think, that community doesn't think she's going to do as best a job as young Kwan will. And so see, when you have these type of mechanisms in place, it holds everybody accountable. And you can do that without really voting. Yeah, you really could. In theory, you could. If you have an all-volunteer community board in the community, take applications from people who want to serve that particular community, and they refer it back to the party. Technically, the community has voted, but they haven't submitted a ballot or done all of that rigmarole. They're just basing this off of who's best for the community, based off of community service. And see, I think in democracy we should look into that too. A lot of times these Congress members, they haven't done a lot of community service, and you are not really looking at whether they're going to do a good job for your communities, because you're not taking community service into account. I think community service is hugely important. If you have a track record of really doing something beneficial for the community, you're more than likely going to make a better public official than some affluent business person that just wants to buy a seat so they can have a title and a position. This is what's currently happening. A lot of those members of Congress, they're just wealthy, affluent people who just want a title. They're not in it really for the betterment of the community and the citizenry. And this is why democracy is in a crisis. The People's Republic of China, they also are very astute to history. The West is putting pressure on them to become a democracy, but they look at what happened in Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was not a democracy, and overnight they became a democracy. Then they had civil war and unrest. So that quick transition from authoritarianism to democracy, it didn't benefit the general society. You look at Russia. How many times has Russia gone back and forth with authoritarian autocracies, democracies? Yeah, they bounce back all over the place. So China is astutely aware of this, and they're like, one party control, whilst it might seem horrid, you actually can get a lot of beneficial things done for the citizenry, because you're totally focused on the betterment and fulfillment of the people. I'm just saying. But I think there does need to be some accountability mechanisms in place, because that's why there's purges now in the party, because you had people who, just because they claim they're communists doesn't mean they're not taking money under the table and being corrupt and not really doing a good job for the people they're claiming to serve. So I really am looking into this theory about a volunteer governing board of community residents who live in the community. They can be from all walks of life: students, farmers, business people. They just do this on a volunteer basis. They look over the resume of folks who want to be a member of the CCP party in their community. And they submit the best application to party at large. And then the party at large can determine whether they're a good fit or not. Oftentimes, if a community says somebody is really good, that's going to hold a lot of weight with me. You know, I looked at that Senate race in Louisiana between Gary Chambers and John Kennedy. Gary Chambers had done a shit ton of community service for Louisiana, his community. And you all sent back John Kennedy, who hasn't done shit for you. And I'm just thinking to myself, you know, it's democracy, you know, people voted. Most people didn't vote. Most people don't care to vote anymore. But who would have been the better public servant for the entire state, for the communities most afflicted by poverty? Who's done the actual work? Who's been a good shepherd? And see, I think sometimes that really gets overlooked in a democracy. Sometimes you can get so stale and not really do a lot of introspection and look at yourself and your situation you're in. You know, I think America really has to do some work and wonder why it meanders on the precipice of crisis and democracy every 2 weeks. It's because internally there's something wrong with the system. The mechanism is not functioning correctly. There might be better ways to do things. And because we don't want to examine that, because folks are so stubborn and so used to a thing. You know, nowadays, in this type of environment, you have to be flexible and nimble. You have to be able to adjust to different circumstances. And so that's why I said these are principles for a new emerging world. These principles might not be utilized for our current structure, our current systems. And that's fine with me. But I think down the road, these type of principles, they're going to be integrated into what's coming. Yeah, for sure. Because these are not some fly-by-night, not well thought out principles. These are principles that you can go and say, X works, Y works. If X plus Y work, then Z might work as well. Yeah, these are kind of steps. Principalistic steps, yeah. And so, I don't have necessarily a problem with one party rule. I want to make that clear. Generally speaking, I support democratic values. I support the citizenry having a voice in a republic. The most powerful entity, albeit invisible, is the citizenry in a republic. And I think regardless of whatever republic you're talking about, the one common thread and through line through all of this now in contemporary time is folks, especially younger folks, saying that governance, the model of governance and how it's being done, isn't necessarily working out. You can be in Ghana, you can be in China, you can be in America, you can be in England, you can be in Germany, you can be anywhere. And folks say this isn't just working out the way it's supposed to. They instinctively feel that way. And you know, I think it behooves all of us to say that reimagining things, providing new principles for a new emerging world is somehow problematic intrusive on the old system and the old way of knowing and doing things. Look, they used to do things a different way before we did it. So this whole concept of reimagining things, that's not new. People used to go outside and stone people to death before they developed toxins and chemicals to inject into your arm to murder you, right? So these principles, these concepts, these are just thought experiments, you all. I've long thought that community service is the most underrated element. I think there's a direct correlation between community service and good governance. Meaning that if you really don't have any community service minded individuals, you're more than likely not going to get good governance. You know, how many folks care about the unhoused situation? Well, how many of these elected officials have ever worked and serviced unhoused people? You know, maybe once or twice during the election year they'll come out and talk to somebody that's unhoused, but that's different talking and working and feeding somebody for Thanksgiving than actually working with that population for a long period of time. Hearing about the many concerns. You know, it's hard to get a job if you don't have a place where you can go and shower. It's hard to get mail if you don't have a post office address. It's hard to get an ID if you don't have a birth certificate. Hard to get a job if you got a felony on your record. Yeah, see, there's usually a lot of multitude of variables in these things. And the blind spot of democracy is that a lot of our public officials are completely unaware of these things. You can't say they don't care because I don't know if they're even aware. If you're aware and you don't care, that's one thing, but I don't think many of them are aware. Because we're electing folks who don't really work in the community. They don't do community service. And I think that's crucial and essential. And so what I would recommend to the CCP party is that they have some type of volunteer board. Go and look over who really wants to represent them. And they look and find the person with the most beneficial community service, the person who's actually done the nitty-gritty, the dirty work in the community. And that's the person they nominate to the overriding board, the CCP party. And they can accept or reject the person. But if they reject the person, they really should have an explanation as to why. They shouldn't just reject and give no notice as to why. See, because then that's going to upset the community. That's going to be like, that's a slap in our face. We found the best person we think, we know what's best for us. We live in this community. You might think you know what's best for us, but you can't live in every community, right? So this is where Big Brother can get big-headed. Yeah. We have to look at things from a macro point of view, but also a micro point of view, too. You know, when you put something under a magnascope, you start to see all the different cells that are invisible to the naked eye. It's the same thing with governance. President Xi can't be in every jurisdiction or district every day. He's got to rely on what the people are telling him. But sometimes, if you put somebody in charge of something, and you think they're doing a good job, and they come and tell you, oh, there's no problem here, and you can't really go there to see if there's a problem. You're just taking that person's word. There'll be a problem. Folks will get mad at you that you haven't addressed the problem, but you won't even know there's a problem because you're listening to somebody telling you there's no problem. That's why I said this type of mechanism where you, the people, on a volunteer basis, just look for the best of the best in your community and you submit it directly. That's a game changer. Think about it. That's a game changer. That's better than direct democracy if you think about it. Because we vote in clowns and nitwits. Buffoons. Donald Trump was a clown, a nitwit, and a buffoon. Yeah, he was all three. And then something. So just because you say we get a chance and a right to vote doesn't mean we always make the correct determination. If you have community-minded folks only out for the interests of what's best for their community, making those determinations, not some board off somewhere, half the time they might be in Switzerland on vacation on the Alps with their children. And then they just tell you, one of my family members, they just graduated from university. They'd be a good fit for your community. No, we can't do that. Because that's where the corruption comes in. That's why there's purges, because that's the way it was done. Nepotism. Yeah. Family ties. Bloodlines. That's what creates this kind of corruption. Because there's no mechanism for the community to really say, we want the best person for our community. Yeah. So I think it's essential that there must be some type of mechanism put in place. Let the people decide. They can look over the resumes. If the governing body has a suggestion, then submit your suggestion to the community. They would have no problem looking over it. One thing that I've really noted and I appreciate about the Chinese people, and we have many Chinese friends, they do their due diligence. They're very thoughtful and thorough in their analysis. So if they're going to critique something, they're going to tell you X, Y, and Z as to why the critique is necessary. Yeah. And ultimately, people, wherever they are, no matter who they are, they want the best for themselves and their families and their community. Nobody wants a bum to represent them. Nobody. And oftentimes we get these type of situations because we're not all integrally involved. We can't all do the research. Think about it. We have all of these judges that we get told to vote on. Nobody knows who the hell these judges are. I'm talking about America right now. Nobody knows who the hell these judges are. We don't know how they rule. We don't know if they're racist. We don't know if they're misogynistic. We don't know if they're homophobic. We just get a ballot with all of these names on them. They don't come to our community. They don't speak to us. We don't know if they're just sentencing people for having possession of marijuana to 5 years in jail, or whether they can sentence somebody to community service and rehab. We don't know what the hell they're doing. And it's important to have knowledge before you make a decision. Yeah, so that's why democracy is in a problem here. Because a lot of times maybe 2 or 3 folks have enough time to research what these folks are doing, and then it's not enough time to spread the word to their entire community that they're problematic. I'm just saying, I really am up on shit, and I don't know who the hell these judges are. Do you want to know who these sheriffs are that you vote on? I don't. I'm going to be honest. I don't know who these sheriffs are in these communities that we vote on. We don't know who the hell these people are. They could be murdering and beating up wives and girlfriends and doing all kind of shit, and we wouldn't know. They should have to come before us, tell us what they've done, what they're going to do, and then we can make a proper determination. I'm sick of just getting a ballot with some folks, strangers' names on it. And they tell us, well, nobody is contesting them. Yeah, nobody knows who they are, so how will we contest them? Like, this is getting ridiculous. And that's why people don't participate in this system. Because people feel that, we don't really have too much of a voice or say so. We don't know who these folks are. And the same people just keep getting sent back. And they might be atrocious. Some of them might be good. We don't know. Somebody needs to come up with a short tutorial about what these judges all across America, how they've been ruling. Because some of these judges in these local jurisdictions have ruined people's lives. And I mean that sincerely. They have ruined citizens' lives. And if we had enough knowledge as a citizenry to know who was problematic on those benches, they wouldn't be there. And so we need some type of mechanism in place, whether you're in a democracy or an autocracy. We need some type of mechanism in place where we know who these folks are. They need to identify themselves, what they've done for the community. Yeah, you get Judge John Dickerson on your ballot. I'm like, who's John Dickerson? What's he done? Yeah, somebody said they'll send you out a pamphlet. Let me tell you something. The pamphlet they send you out, this is what gets me upset, you all. The pamphlets they send you out, that shit is paid for by the person. Now we need an independent volunteer body of citizens to look over how these judges have been ruling. And we need to know if they're toxic or not, so we can get them the hell out of office. Period. And that's going to benefit all of us as a citizenry. Yeah. So these are mechanisms in place, you all. We need mechanisms in place so we can have a better system. And I said, if the CCP party wants to override the people in China, then they have to send a notice. Why? Right back to the folks and say, when you looked at what you said about Young Kwan, and Young Kwan, he has a good resume, but Amy Lin, she's done X, Y, and Z, and she's affiliated with the party more so than Young Kwan. Be honest about it. You didn't pick Young Kwan because Young Kwan wasn't affiliated with the party. He might have been the best person for the community, but because he didn't have ties to the party, you didn't pick Young Kwan. You went for Amy Lin. That's nepotism. And let me tell you what's going to happen. I'm not certain about it, but corruption could happen. Because Amy Lin now knows that she's just in there at the behest of some family member of a party. She's a friend of somebody. She might not give a damn about what the community says. She might not. With Young Kwan, the people can say, you're the best person. We went and nominated you. Here's what we want you to advocate for when you get up there for the party. We need some accountability and mechanisms in place now. This is getting to be ridiculous. as some people would say, redunculous. Yeah, and you all, this is what's best for all of us. Yeah, checks and balances, accountability. Like, it's going to keep them honest. They might want to do a good job. But sometimes it's easier to do a bad job when nobody's having any type of supervision over you than it is to do a good job. That's a fact. You can be a slack off if nobody's supervising you. You're not going to put your maximum energy into it. Now, if it's coming from the community and everybody in the community darn near can vouch for you and say Young Quan is the best person, he's going to fire this community up, he's going to do X, Y, and Z, then people can go to Young Quan and say, hey, we really thought based off of your resume that you were going to do this for us. We really believed in you. Yeah, that can reinvigorate somebody that's slacking off then. Can be like, yeah, you did believe in me. I did have this good resume. Now I'm going to get up there and do it. These are principles for a new emerging world. We need to start thinking broadly. We can't just be so aggrieved to what has been that we can't examine critically what's going right and what's going wrong. Some people are like, I don't like self-examination. Don't you take an annual at the doctor? You can be perfectly healthy, right? But you go every year annually to go and see your doctor, right? To do a wellness checkup, right? Why do you do that? Because even if you feel fine, there could be something off in you internally that you might not know about. Yeah, there's a mechanism to make sure you're remaining healthy. Yeah. So anybody that has a problem with putting a mechanism in place, you gotta look at them sideways. I go, oh, I don't know about him. I don't know about her. They're upset that we're putting a mechanism in place to hold them accountable. I'd be like, now I'm not going to say they're doing anything because I don't know. But I'm going to start thinking it. I'm like, why don't they want checks and balances? Why don't they want anybody to have oversight? And not just anybody. I'm talking about people who live in the community who do it on a volunteer basis out of the charitable benefit and tenacity of their heart because they love their community and they want the best for their community. I'm not talking about anybody appointed by some board. I'm not talking about anybody that the CCP tries to front run. I'm talking about volunteers, people who want to do it, people of all ages and backgrounds, regardless of affiliation to the party or not, regardless of participation to the party or not. I'm talking about getting somebody that's really for the people. People talk about for the people, but then when you submit somebody for the people, sometimes they're like, well, they're too much for the people. Go figure. And then we have problems in these communities that never get solved. You all know, you can look around. Don't we have problems that just linger and persist and pester? Yeah, we have problems that just linger and persist and pester. And it's not because there's not complaints. It's not because people are not voicing what needs to get done. It's because there's no mechanism in place to really put a foot up people's behinds to get it done. It's a damn disgrace that these corporations and these wealthy, affluent people are paying 2% in taxes. We ought to have a constitutional convention where we demand and make them We passed a constitutional amendment where we make them pay a certain amount of taxes to this republic to provide for the commons. If they don't want to do it, then we, the citizenry, should have a mechanism in place. You listen to me. We should have a mechanism in place where we demand it through a constitutional amendment that they pay at least 11 to 13% in taxes. This is ridiculous. Streets are crumbling, apartment buildings are falling down, bridges are falling into the water, and these folks are off on yachts. This is ridiculous. And then folks are complaining about democracy being in crisis. Yeah, you're letting people off the hook. See, we should be pushing. We got to put pressure on folks now. We should be pushing more. And you can't just say in China they should be pushing when you're not pushing in America. Everybody should be pushing their people. Yeah, the folks in China should be putting pressure on the CCP party. You should be putting pressure on your Congress members and senators to make those rich people pay their fair share. And somebody said, I don't necessarily believe in fair share. Well, we know if you've got trillions of dollars, paying 2%, paying lower than your reception is not fair. We can all instinctively know that. If it's bad times, they pay 9%. If it's good times, they pay 13%. 2% is outrageous. It's preposterous. Yeah, it's damn right criminal what they're getting away with doing here. And the Republicans and conservatives want to roll it down to 0%. If they had it their way, they wouldn't have them pay a penny to us. Yeah. So we can't sit there and chew off and mouth off at an autocracy when they're not necessarily behaving the correct way. When we've got a democracy and people like Jeff Bezos and Dick and Liz Uline are not behaving correctly either. Yeah. No, I don't have any problem with the purges in the CCP party. There are corrupt folks. There are folks that got those positions. Let me tell you something. There are folks that got those positions, however they came in. Somebody said they came in energetic. Yeah, and they fizzled out like a dud. Yeah, they might have came in one way, but how are they operating now? Are they taking money under the table? Are they servicing their community? Is the roads getting fixed? Are new buildings being put up? Can people afford to live in the cities and communities where they used to? Are people coming out of poverty? Are more people going into poverty? See, these are all things that we can analyze and look at. Men lie, women lie, numbers do not lie. So we can look at these things objectively. Numbers are unbiased. You know, you go to any major city in this country and you see unhoused people. You know, they had the nerve to tell us this lie recently that in Miami there's 600 unhoused people. Are you all for real? Do you all really believe there's only 600 unhoused people in the city of Miami, Florida? You know, they tell people nowadays all kind of cockamamie crazy shit. 600 people? No, there's thousands of people unhoused in Miami. It's a one bedroom and you're paying $3,000 a month. One bedroom in Miami will set you back $3,000. Can't nobody afford that shit. People are putting groceries on payment plans. Stop lying to us. So these things need to stop now. Those folks that have a lot, they need to pay their fair share now. It's time for shared prosperity, shared American prosperity. We don't have to do any common prosperity. Folks in America don't like commonality. You know, the rich folks here are sick as hell. There's some sick puppies. They'll sit there with 20 Lamborghinis, can't drive one of them, but they'll sit there with 20 Lamborghinis collecting dust. And you know they'll be happy about it because they'll know you can't even afford dog food. Yeah, there's people that are happy that you're starving. That's a sickness. This man, you know who I'm talking about, he told them folks out there, the SAG folks, he told them folks protesting, he said, you're asking for too much. No, they're not. They were asking for a 9% raise increase. Many of them, 87% of stage actors, make $26,000 or less per year annually. 26. Think about that. You know anybody that can really afford to live in this country with inflation the way it is at $26,000 a year? You're like, there's a lot of people that live that way. Are they really living? No, they're barely getting by. And these bitches on these big ass yachts that don't pay nothing in taxes, watching bridges and tunnels and buildings collapsing, and because they contributed and have bought out Supreme Court justices like Clarence Thomas, he's a crook. He needs to get off that bench. He needs to get the hell off that bench. He's a damn disgrace, you all. This man has 5 sugar daddies that bought and paid him out, and then says, I don't have any interest. These people, I didn't recuse myself because they didn't have any interest before the court. What a damn liar. You believe that? You believe that somebody will fly you around to Switzerland, Oslo, on a private jet, put you up in a log cabin for 15 days, give you 5-star meals, pay for your mother's home, pay for all your children and grandchildren to go to university, and you don't think they have any interest before the court? Who the hell does he think he's talking to? See, this is corruption. And if he was in China, they would have terminated him by now. Because they're weeding out their corrupt folk. We need to do that too. We need to have some type of mechanism in place where we can just, an independent body of the citizenry, we can look at folks who are corrupt and we can say they're out of here. Even before they finish their term, they're out of here. If you're a senator, if you're a congress member, if you're a United States Supreme Court justice, the president will leave alone because they have 4-year terms. We get the vote on them. But some of these congress members, you all, they're corrupt as hell. Yeah, they're corrupt as hell. And I don't blame the CCP party for purging some of their members. They're just as corrupt over there. They're corrupt as hell. They caught people, let me tell you something. They caught Chinese Communist Party members taking bribes. You're taking bribes. They caught them on tape taking bribes. And then they had the nerve to be mad that the president is purging the party. No, you need to get the hell out. You're a damn disgrace. Yeah, they're a damn disgrace. And I'm glad they're being purged out of the party. You know, he was kicked out of the party for not being loyal enough. They sent him to a hard labor camp. Yeah. So if anybody knows about being excommunicated from the party, it's the current president of China, because they kicked his ass out. And his dad was a big-time communist member. But he said, you know what? You're problematic. You gotta go. Some people need to hit the showers a little bit. Take a refresher course. Maybe it'll serve them better. Because you can't be on tape taking bribes from folks and then not doing anything for your community. They're taking money and living lavishly in big old homes, and people are having a hard time out here. This is ridiculous. That's why I told you all, this needs to come to an end now. And it's going to. We're going to have to maybe sue some folks. We're going to have to take some folks to court. But we can't even take folks to court because the judges are corrupt here. Yeah, the judges are corrupt as hell. We can't even take folks to court and expect a fair judgment in court because the judges are corrupt as hell. Yeah, we're going to have to do something about this. And we're going to have to do it quickly. Because the situation is bad. As bad as it's ever been. And it's not getting any worse. It's not getting any better. Pardon me. Yeah, this is getting worse, y'all. This is getting far worse. And I have no problem with the purges in the party. It should have happened a long time ago. Folks should gracefully, they should come into the office and dance and turn in and tenure their resignation. You're on tape, bitch. They got you on tape making a phone conversation telling this Secretary of State to find you more votes, and you're pissed off that a district attorney is doing her job servicing her community. See, when we do have good public officials, you all say that they're racist because they're black women. You gotta stop letting people dog you out and play games with your mind. Now, that woman is doing her damn job. She's actually being a good public official. She's looking out for the best interests of her community. Yeah. DA Fannie Willis, great job. Yeah. DA Alvin Bragg, great job. Attorney General Letitia James, great job. These are great patriots. They're not corrupt. And see, when you start holding corrupt people accountable, then they do something I call classic projection. They're not corrupt anymore. It's you. You're corrupt. No, because you didn't buy them out. See, that's what it is. They can't buy out Fannie Willis. They can't buy out Alvin Bragg. They can't buy out Letitia James. They can't buy out Jack Smith. So those are the people, anytime these rich bastards start complaining about something, you know that they're the ones that have been corrupt and they're being held accountable. And because they can't buy out everybody like they did Clarence Thomas, they get pissed off. And they can't buy out the president of China. He said, you got to get out of here. You have 24 hours. You get caught on a tape taking a bribe in Switzerland, you're out of the party. You get caught on a tape taking a bribe in Oslo or in Greenland or in Germany, you're out of the party. Kudos. Kudos to them. This should have happened a long time ago. It's time to get back to some basic principles, you all. Just basic 101 principles. If you're not doing a good job in the community, you gotta go. It's time for somebody else to have a turn. And if they don't do a good job, we'll find somebody else. We'll keep playing musical chairs until we find somebody who's going to do a damn job to do the job that we, the people, sent them there to do.